Now SUVs are getting more and more popular every day. And part of the appeal is the size and that intimidating presence. Well, the vehicle I have for you today tops everything. This is Kalyani's M4. It's Armoured Personnel Carrier. And we're going to drive it and tell you what it's like. Ladies and gentlemen, say a big hello to the Kalyani M4, the off-roader you need if you want to start an argument. How big is it? Roughly 6 meters long, around 2.6 meters wide and 2.5 meters tall. The KM4 is triple XL size by any standard. Now first up, let's look at the safety systems. And yes, spoiler alert, there's no global end cap rating. Built to withstand a full-on assault from light, medium and heavy machine guns, it shrugs off grenades like they're harmless firecrackers. The V-shaped hull can dissipate a 8 to 10 kilo TNT explosion between the wheels, and it can even, incredibly, survive 155mm howitzer shell if it's fired from more than 60 meters out. And should it need to be evacuated, it can be lifted out by a heavy lift helicopter. Meant exclusively for our armed forces and paramilitary, it tips the scales at a pavement-crushing 14 tons. But what's it like to drive? Now, job number one is getting in, and ingress isn't easy. Climbing up to the driver's seat is like scaling a peak. Step 1 involves actually opening the vault-like door. You need 2 hands, 2 arms, 2 shoulders, and the added leverage from your feet and hips. Once the doors open, you clamber up to the elevated driving position using hand and footholds like you're a rock climber. Once inside the cabin, the controls are pretty basic. You get a power steering, an automatic drive selector and a truck-type pneumatic handbrake. But no powered windows. In fact, you can't wind the windows down at all. The bulletproof glass is just way too heavy. The seats aren't cooled, you don't get powered seats, and there's no wireless charging. You get a forward-facing and reversing camera, very important. And it's easy to access the controls for the 4-wheel drive system and the locking differentials. You even get grab rails for when the vehicle is moving around, air conditioning, and in addition to the USB ports, you also have gun ports, should you need to fire back. But enough of the cabin, let's get going. So, slightly larger than your regular MPV, only a bit more intimidating, and a natural cure for constipation. Driving this beast initially requires a lot of faith. Faith in the big tires, faith in the weight transfer, and faith in what it can go over. I'm worried that whatever I go over is going to crush and demolish completely. While I see huge rocks passing under the wheels, I feel none of them. This is eerie, and adding to the detachment is the acoustic isolation. We are encased in a thick cage of steel with several layers of bulletproof glass, so apart from the noise of the engine, very little sound filters in. Driving off-road in this thing feels even more surreal. We seem to be gliding across the surface. Now for the most bit, this vehicle feels like a hovercraft. We cross a deep rocky brook. It's like it doesn't exist, and you can literally point this thing up and climb just about any slope. It even three wheels through some artificially prepared dips. Now the weight is something you always have to be aware of. You have to keep it in mind. Where's the weight transferring? What effect will that have? And that sort of gets you sweating. You don't want to get the car unstable. You don't want it to dip one side down. You don't want it to rock or transfer weight in an area where you could get slip. And that's sort of the challenge of driving this. Performance, as you can imagine, is pretty glacial. I can feel the engine rev and push against the weight as it takes the strain. Motor power comes from a Cummins engine which makes 450 horsepower and 1620 Newton meters. Now that is multiplied by a conventional torque converter equipped gearbox, and this vehicle has a low range, locking diffs, and of course special Michelin tires which are actually made in India, and these are crucial in giving it that grip and the ability to find traction in places and get over this huge curb weight of 14 tons. Driving the KM4 at higher speeds on the road is a bit easier. While acceleration isn't quick and the power steering is still heavy, one thing's for sure, this monocoque must have unprecedented levels of stiffness. However, on the road, visibility becomes even more critical. Visibility close up is extremely poor, so you have to know where the vehicle is going, and that sort of makes it a challenge. It's surprisingly difficult to stay within a lane. It's something we naturally do, you like to stick to a lane. But here, I have to straddle both lanes, and well, that just seems wrong. Also, while we are moving a bit quicker, this is only relative. Now, the feeling of invincibility sitting here is just massive. You're protected by this bulletproof glass. There's inches of armor surrounding you. So even if you get shot at, you're likely to remain uninjured. Even the ride is great, and that's despite the run flat tires, the type that you can shoot at and still not have the vehicle stop. Now, I must say, on its air suspension, the ride quality is pretty good, and for this vehicle I can promise you no large potholes or sharp edge bumps will cause any problem. In fact, most dividers won't cause any problem either. While it does roll like the Titanic in corners and at times feels like an apartment block falling over, it does eventually settle on its air springs and go around corners without too much fuss. Now that we've seen how it drives, let's take a look at that hatch in the back. Now this is a hatchback of a slightly different kind. So like an MPV, there's 6 seats in the back. You face each other, and of course you have the protection of this Armoured Personnel Carrier. There are 2 hatches if you need to defend yourself, as well as a large central hatch for a light machine gun. The hatch doesn't open or close manually, and the interesting bit is that this part is armored too. Meant exclusively for our paramilitary and armed forces, the KM4 is exactly the sort of vehicle that can save lives and will protect our troops. To be made in India by the Kalyani Group in association with Paramount, it represents a big step forward. But don't you wish you could buy one? Please be careful of other cars.